If somebody could get for me Matthew 19:16 through 30, somebody who's comfortable with reading out loud. And we'll read that in just a couple of minutes. So this week,
What was it?
It's Matthew 19:16 through 30. So this week, I'm sorry.
I can read it.
Okay, all right. I'll let you know when we get there. So this week we've been talking a lot about having the desire to pursue God.
Okay, well, they're calling again. Right. So last week we talked about a lot about that desire to pursue God, and then we kind of went off and talked a little bit about how we feel like God is with us and how we know that God is with us, even if we don't necessarily feel Him in the moment. And so as we're endeavoring to get closer to God, there's certain things that are going to get in our way. There's certain roadblocks we're going to come up against, right? Because, we have our distractions in life, but we also have the enemy who doesn't want us to get close to God. So in chapter 2, A.W. Tozer makes a point of saying that there is a blessing for people who do not consider their possessions to be too important. To people who do not even consider their things to be theirs, but rather consider it to belong to God. To these people, nothing can ever be more important than God. And I've heard the saying, when you have something clenched in your fist, God can't put anything into your hand, right? Because we try so hard to control things ourselves and hold on to our things that sometimes God can't give us the better things that He has for us. Sometimes we get in our own way of our relationship with God. Why don't you read that verse that he asked you to read?
It was 16 through 30, right?
Yes.
And behold, one came and said unto him, Good master, what good thing shall I do that I may have eternal life? And he said unto him, Why callest thou me good? There is none good but one, that is God. But if thou wilt enter into life, keep the commandments. He saith unto him, Which? Jesus said, Thou shalt do no murder, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness, honor thy father and thy mother, and thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. The young man saith unto him, All these things have I kept from my youth. What lack I yet? Jesus said unto him, If thou wilt be perfect, go and sell that thou hast, and give to the poor, and thou shalt have treasure in heaven, and come and follow me. But when the young man heard that saying, he went away sorrowing, for he had great possessions. Then said Jesus unto his disciples, Verily I say unto you, that a rich man shall hardly enter into the kingdom of heaven. And again I say unto you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of God. When his disciples heard it, they were exceedingly amazed, saying, Who then can be saved? But Jesus beheld them and said unto them, With men this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. Then answered Peter and said unto him, Behold, we have forsaken all and followed thee. What shall we have therefore? Jesus said unto them, Verily I say unto you, that ye which have followed me, the regeneration when the Son of Man shall sit in the throne of his glory, ye also shall sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And every one that hath forsaken houses, or brethren, or sisters, or father, or mother, or wife, or children, or lands, for my name's sake, shall receive an hundredfold, and shall inherit everlasting life. The many that are first shall be last, and the last shall be first.
Yes, thank you for reading that. So, how many of you have heard the scripture before that talks about the camel going through the eye of a needle and how crazy that sounds? Does anybody have any thoughts on how that, what have you thought about that scripture?
I've heard that there was actually a specific doorway in Jerusalem that you had to, a camel couldn't be carrying anything on it in order to squeeze through it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so these camels, they would have to take all the luggage off of it. And the camels would have to get down and kneel down and basically shimmy through this hole in order to get through it. And so when we hear a camel going through the eye of a needle, we think, well, that's impossible completely. What it's really saying is it's hard and you have to put some effort into it sometimes, but God can do anything. And so I just thought that was an interesting part of the scripture because that place was called Eye of the Needle that the camels would have to get through. But yeah.
And another thing, I'm reading the King James Version, but here there's a footnote on a rich man shall hardly enter into the kingdom of heaven. The footnote on hardly is for a Greek translation, meaning with difficulty.
Right.
A rich man with difficulty
Right.
will enter the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah, because what it's saying here is that, you know, rich people, they have so much that they're trying to hold on to that they're not able to give themselves to God, right? Like, the more we take value in things, the less we're taking value in God. And I think that's something we have to consider every day is we have to be like, who's first on my totem pole, right? Like, what's my list of importance right now? And is God actually at the top of it? How many of us can say that every single day God is actually at the top of our list? Or how many times do we have to go back and say, wow, I put this before God, I'm sorry. You know, there's so many times I get through the day and I'm like, I was worrying about this and this and this instead of just talking to God about it. Like, or I planned on reading my Bible as soon as I got up this morning, and then I went and did this and this and this and this, and now I'm reading it right before bed about 2 verses, you know? And that's normal, and that doesn't mean we don't value God, but I think we have to take a look at our own hearts and our life and say, what am I putting before God? And what do I care about more than God right now? Because if we're not careful, we can become like the rich guy that doesn't get into heaven because he cares too much about his possessions to let go of it all and follow Jesus. Because how many of us think like, wow, how could this person not follow Jesus? You have the opportunity to follow Jesus in person and walk behind him, and yet you went back to all of your belongings, or you went back to your family, or all of those different situations we see in the New Testament. But I think we might have done the same thing. I mean, we get so caught up in our lives and so caught up in what we care about here that we kind of miss the point of things sometimes, miss the point of our relationship with God. I don't know how many of you heard about that, the Maze Fire that was going on 2 weeks ago, I think. It was like right outside of Rexburg. It was only about like 7 miles from us.
Oh, I saw it.
Yeah. And, well, so Peyton comes home from work, right? And when he gets home, he says that he saw smoke, that there's a fire, there's a lot of people like going to try and look at it, and they're trying to clear out the scene because they're trying to take care of the fire and everybody's trying to crowd in and look at it. But we go on with our day, we're not thinking anything of it. And then, because, you know, it's just a fire so far, we haven't heard anything crazy. Hours later during the night, we get a text from Sully and Mariah checking in on us because they said the fire has grown to massive proportions. And we checked, and it had grown like, Sully will know the numbers better than I was because he was watching it. But it was over 600 acres an hour, at least. It might have been closer to 900. And so it was getting a lot closer to us. And so that moment, I don't know if any of you have been through something like that where you're like, everything's in danger, right? But I can tell you, my thoughts start going to, oh my goodness, I'm gonna lose all of my stuff, right? I mean, you think like all of these things that don't matter very much, but you're thinking, well, I don't want to have to go out and buy all new clothes, or I don't want to go out and have to, you know, like, I don't want to lose this memento that I have. It's, what am I going to pack in a suitcase? We don't have much time to pack a to-go bag, right? And so Peyton and I are both thinking in our heads, okay, what should we pack just in case, and what should we grab? And Peyton's like, well, if they tell us to evacuate, then we'll just shove a bunch of stuff in a suitcase. And I'm like, what if that's too late? We got to get out if they say evacuate. And so I want you guys to all think about that for a minute. What would you grab? You know, what would you take if you had no time? And what I found out after the situation, looking back on it, was that I care a lot about really unimportant things, right? I care a lot about replaceable possessions. And I think we could all say that about ourselves, that there's things that we try to hold on to when in eternity it's not going to matter. I don't know if you've heard the stories about those people that like pharaohs in Egypt, where they would bury all of their great possessions with them because they wanted it in the afterlife. That's not the way it works, right? But we can have that same kind of mentality on earth because we want to hold on to things. We care so much about it that we want it in eternity with us. When really what we should care about in eternity is being with Jesus. You know, our whole life is about that relationship we have with God. And that's the beauty of heaven, is that we get to be with Jesus forever. Like, we get to be with the one who saved us, our best friend. And that should be the goal, is that throughout our life, we get to the point that that Jesus is the most important thing to us. And one day we get to see him face to face, you know? So we must give God everything, right? That's the point of it all, is that we can't hold on to this world. We have to give it to God so that we can grow our relationship with God. Peyton has this example in his notes. I give you this burger under one condition. Before I give it to you, I wash my hands and I get a pinch of the burger. Just let me have a pinch. How many of you are taking that deal?
I'll take that.
You'll take that deal. I'll give you this entire burger, just let me keep 1% of it, right? So that's a pretty good deal, I think. If we give all but that 1%, that's kind of what he's trying to point at, is we say, God, I'm giving you everything, except I'm going to hold on to this little thing. You know, 99% is a lot. That's a passing grade. You'd graduate with high honors. But if I say, just give me this 1%, what is that showing? It's showing that I'm in control and not God. I decide what is mine and what is not mine. I decide what I keep and what I can get rid of. We must surrender everything to God, not just half of it, or not 99%, but everything. Of your family, of your job, your money, your possessions. It all belongs to him anyway, but he gives it to us. And if we're not careful, we can allow our possessions to possess us. We can care so much about things that's what we let our minds be consumed with. That's what we spend our time with. And God gets less and less and less of our lives. And I'm not saying that, you know, having hobbies and different things like that are bad, but when God is only getting 1% of our life, something's wrong with the equation, right? Something's wrong with that. There's a blessedness to owning nothing. And I don't know how well I would do if I didn't own anything, but I can appreciate that there's a simpleness to having less, right? Because then you're less consumed with things. I have a friend who always was talking about trying to, like, I guess minimalist is what it was. She was trying to get rid of things all the time. And she had so little. I would look at her room and I'm like, oh, it was at college, so it's just a little dorm room. And she's like purging stuff. And I'm like, you have so much less than anyone I've met. But she just wanted less. She just wanted to be minimalist. And I could see the piece to that, at least. You always know where your stuff is. It's, you know, the exact thing you want, and not like can opener that doesn't work that's still in your pantry, you know, like it was nice. But I think the main point is that we need to be careful not to focus too much on things rather than God. And that's why the Bible says, you know, God will take care of all the things. You just give him control and he will, you know. You let him take control of your life, and he'll make sure you have clothes to wear. He'll make sure you have food to eat. He'll make sure that you're taken care of. But letting God have control is really hard to do.
Seems like too, when we hold on to something, it's a source of worry.
Mm-hmm.
Like, carnal example is you guys,
Mm-hmm.
when you lived in the apartment, your washer and dryer belonged to them. You didn't have to worry about anything. Now,
Yeah.
you have the house and you have the washer and dryer, and I've heard Peyton say 3 or 4 times, Gabby, don't break the washer and dryer. This is ours. Don't overload it. So it's like now it belongs to you, and now you have to worry about it.
Mhm.
So it seems like when we hold on to it a little bit, no matter how small that little bit is, it just becomes a source of worry.
Mhm. I think so many times we've realized that we're worrying about things that we don't need to after the fact, you
Right.
know. Or we say, okay, God, I'm looking for a job. Let's say like that. I'm looking for a job and I can't find anything. So I'm going to put it in your hands. And then you find yourself a week later and you're scouring the internet and you're stressing, like sweating, and you're like, I'm never going to be able to pay this bill because I can't find a better job, you know. And then, you know, the next day you get a call for the perfect interview, find the perfect job. And I'm not saying it always happens that fast, but what I am saying is that God knows what's going on. I mean, if we look at like our housing situation, we tried to go for a few different houses before we got the house we got. and God told us, like, I have the right house for you and you're going to know it when you see it, kind of thing. And we still spent a long time just waiting, and you know, every once in a while we would get a little stressed about it because it's like, our lease is coming up, what are we gonna do? But now I'm sitting in my house and I'm like, wow, if I just let God take care of it in the first place, all that stress I would have saved myself. I don't know how many of you have been in similar situations, but it's like, looking back, man, God tells us stuff for a reason. If he says he's got it under control, he's got it under control. And so we don't want to let our things hold us back from our pursuit of God, right?
Right.
And not just our tangible possessions like clothes and, you know, knickknacks or whatever we want to hold on to, but also our non-tangible possessions like, you know, the stuff online that we care about, that we spend time looking into, or the social media that gets our attention, or, you know, our physical traits. A lot of the time people get caught up with how they look. And I'll be the first one to admit, yeah, I've had a few days where I stress about just, you know, how I need to be on a diet again, or different things like that, because we care so much about what we look like, you know. And we should care, you know, that we should want to be presentable, but at the same time, that can edge into pride, you know, because we're focusing so much on ourselves that we're not focusing on God. And one thing I have to remind myself too is, when you are not liking yourself, you're saying God designed you badly, you know? Like, God designed you. Like, if you think you have too big of a nose, it's like you're telling the creator, the author of your life, you did my nose wrong, you know? Like, God made each one of you in a beautiful, perfect way. And it's hard to believe that sometimes, because we get caught up with the way the world portrays beauty or attractiveness. But really, what matters is what God thinks of us.
Right.
I mean, if you're in a relationship, you know, what should only matter to you is what that person thinks of you, right? Not everybody else. So I remember when I got married, I was like, I don't have to worry about looking good anymore. Someone loves me, right? But like, the same way with our relationship with God, you know, we want to only care what he thinks about us, because his view of us is all that matters. His love for us isn't dependent on how we look or how we feel or what we're doing good or bad in the moment. His view of us depends on his love for us as his children, as his creation.
Can I say something?
Yeah, of course.
Jim had a bad heart. He was on oxygen and he called the CPAP machine, told him to come get it because it was making it harder for him to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And then he said, okay, well, did you pay your bill? And Jim goes, I always pay my bills. So then we called back and said, okay, when we pick up the CPAP machine, we're going to take the oxygen too. So they called his heart doctor. His heart doctor called Jim, scheduled an appointment at Blackfoot Hospital. And the doctor said, your heart's at 50% and there's nothing we can do. And I'm like, yeah, no oxygen back. And then he told his son that he didn't want to be here when Jesus comes back because it's going to get too bad. And then he was at home and he fell and he hit his head on the bathtub, had a giant bruise there.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard the noise and I ran outside, there was no car, so I got a car at the house. Came back in, I happened to look down the hall and I could see the bottom of the chute. So I went down the hall, I said, are you okay? He said, I don't know. I said, what happened? He said, I don't know. Then he turned his head and started snoring, and there was a show on TV 2 weeks earlier about how policemen get to really bad car accidents, and they'll talk to the driver, and then they'll start snoring, and then they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
So I ran to the policeman's house, and the little boy answered. I said, is your dad home? He said, no, and slammed the door. So I started home, and my wife chased me down and said, do you need help? And I said, yes. So she called her neighbor, told him to come get the kid. And she came down, and she called her husband. He said, don't call me, call dispatch.
Yeah.
So we turned him over. She started doing CPR 180 times. And then they got there and took him. And the prophetic pastor from the church we were going to said that he got a word that somebody was going to be joined by their family. And he's like, oh, Jim's kid's coming, his sister's coming, his daughter called. And I'm like, that's not what he's talking about. And then they came in, prayed over the doctors, and they left. And they told me the next day that he was not reacting to pain. So they were going to let him go. And I'm like, I should feel bad, but I don't because he's where he wanted to be.
Yeah.
They said he was going to be joined by his family. It was the other way. She would join his family in heaven because there were 4 brothers that died before him. And I'm like, I should be sad, but I'm so happy for him,
Yeah.
you know. And I never did cry.
Mm-hmm.
And then I prayed over my son, and my son was gone in a month, and he wasn't a Christian. So I kept, that day, I said, Mom, call me tomorrow. I said, okay. So I called and called and called, and I'm like, okay, God watch over me, God watch over me, God watch over me. And then halfway through the day, I knew something was really, really, really wrong. So I started praying, God, take care of it. And then his wife answered the phone and she goes, oh, I did this today and I did that today. And I said, and Bruce? She goes, oh, he ate a banana, but he was still hungry, but he couldn't figure out how to hold his food. So I took it away from him. She was
Wow.
a nurse. That's what she did, is take care of people that are in their last space. Anyway, I said, so how's Bruce? She goes, oh, he's really cold, but it's because he's diabetic. I said, go wake him up. And I could hear her saying, Bruce, wake up, Bruce, wake up. Oh, no. And I said, what? She goes, he's not breathing. I said, call the police. And just have them call me. But as stressed as I was about
I think it's similar to a story in the Bible about David when he lost his son, and he said, you know, after his son died, before his son died, he prayed and he cried and he asked God to spare his life, and then after his son died, he got up and he washed his face and he went about his day, and his servants didn't understand what was going on, and so he said, well, I can't bring him back, but I'm going to be with him again one day, you know, and that hope keeps us going, you know, that hope that we have a relationship with God, so, you know, we're going to get to be on the other side, keeps us going. But it's hard when when that person doesn't have a relationship with God, and then we just have to trust, like, God's merciful and God's loving, and that if people want to know God, he's going to draw them to him, you know? So it's hard, but
No, it's heard there. Because of Jesus Christ, there is no tragedy in death, only in sin.
yeah, right, because sin separates us from him. And so sometimes it's easier to let go, sometimes it's harder to let go, is kind of, you know, part of what you were saying. Well, that is what Peyton wanted to talk about, is why is letting go of things so hard? And I think the hardest, well, does anyone have any thoughts on why letting go is so hard?
A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. You think that everything that you own is more valuable, like you're not even thinking about it,
Right.
than the very same thing if you didn't own
Yeah.
it. And in funny little, you know, just the way just a thought that came to me as being connected, even though I hadn't thought of it like that, was, yesterday or earlier today, I was watching a YouTube video,
Mm-hmm.
and, well, I ran out of time to finish it. I had other stuff to go and do.
Yeah.
I was like, I'll finish it.
Yeah.
Whatever. Pause. Go do this stuff. And not even a minute after pausing, I didn't care about finishing it. It's like I gave it up. It's not mine anymore. I don't value it anymore.
Right.
It's like done.
Yeah.
This other stuff I've got to do is more important.
Mm-hmm.
But when it was mine.
Yeah.
Mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you're holding on to it, it seems really, really valuable. It seems like the most important thing in the world, and then when you let go, it's like, oh, I have other things to hold on to now. I have other things to focus on now. But it feels like it's going to be a lot harder than it is when you have it in your hand. Anybody else have any thoughts on why letting go is so hard?
I think it's the unknown.
The unknown. Yeah. Don't know what's gonna happen if you let go. Yeah. Yeah.
Secret sin.
I mean, all of these, correct. You know, like there's a million reasons why it's hard. What Peyton had said is because we like to hold on and be in control, and that's correct too. You know, that's the basis of most disorders that people develop, especially like when I've been looking into like eating disorders, things like that. It's all wrapped around control, because when you feel like you're not in control, you have fear, right? You feel anxious, but feeling in control gives you peace. And so it's the idea of letting go is hard because we don't know what's going to happen, and because we don't have control of it anymore, right? We don't know what's going to come next. And so we have to come to a place where we say, God, everything I have is yours, and let him take care of it. When you let go of things, it's not relinquishing responsibility, it's recognizing that they are a gift from God. And that God gives and can take away. And we can never reach the next level until we come to the place where we trust God enough to allow him to have everything. You know, sometimes he takes things away because he has better things for us. And clinging on to things is one of the most harmful habits in our life. because it can, you know, completely change the trajectory of our life. If someone who focuses too much on one thing might miss out on another opportunity that was better for them. What are some things that are hard for people to give up? He doesn't want an answer out loud, but just think of some things that are hard for you specifically to give up. Consider what those things are that could be holding you back from God, the things that you have a hard time putting into God's hands. Proverbs 15:16 says, "Better is a little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure with trouble." And that's a wise proverb, because so much can just add to our life's trouble. But if you have God, even if you have a little, it doesn't matter. The more we have, the harder we hold on to it. Statistics show that those who give the highest percentage of their income to charity make less than $50,000 a year. That's kind of nuts. I would think it's the people that have the most money to give, but really it's those who don't have a lot that give so much. I mean, I've seen that even in church life, you know, even with our time. People who have the least amount of time are the ones who sacrifice so much of it. People who have the least amount of money are those who sacrifice so much of it. And it's because they realize there are more important things than owning, than having things. There's so much more you can do with your life and your time if you do it in a way that honors God, you know.
Can I say something? I hate taking up so much time.
It's okay.
Lost 5 people in the last 4 years, and now I'm so alone. I'm like, okay, God, I don't even feel like you're with me. Please show me you're here.
Right.
And I keep turning to TV and talk to Gabby, but it's scary because I feel like God's not with me. I'm like, let me know you're here. It's just something.
Yeah.
And then she said that when my life alert went off, I didn't know it because I was pushing the lawnmower and how to hit it. And my phone was in the house, so they called Bears, they called Brian, then fire department showed up, and they're like, "Are you Linda?" I go, "Yeah," because I didn't know who they were. It was just a big white truck, and they go, "Oh, we're just checking on you to make sure you're okay." And I'm like, "Who are you?"
Right.
And they're like, "Oh, we're with Life Alert." And I'm like, "Okay." And I said, "Well, your device went off." So it called your family, and they couldn't get hold of you, so we showed up.
Right.
And she said, "Well, that's God letting you know somebody's there."
Yeah. Well,
But I
and
still feel alone.
I think
Or
it's probably going to take you some time, but there's going to be a lot of ways that God shows you that He's there. It's just, it might feel slow at first because you've felt so alone for so long, but we talked about a little bit last week, you know, how every time God answers your prayer, it's Him showing He's there for you. Every time there's a promise in His word for you, it's Him showing you that He's there for you. The fact that you ended up in a church with people that care about you is God showing you that He's there for you, you know. But also, things happen in our life that hurt our trust in God. It's just the way it happens. Sometimes it feels like we wanted one answer, and the answer that we got from God hurt us, and it doesn't feel like it was a good answer. It doesn't feel like God actually answered when He did. It just wasn't the way we wanted it to, you know? Different things like that, they hurt our faith in God. Even though we know God, we believe in God, but we're hurt because we don't know what's going to happen next, or the next problem we're going to come up against, and how God's going to respond in that situation. And the only way through that is to rebuild our trust. You know, anytime trust is broken in a relationship, you rebuild your trust, and that takes time sometimes. But I believe that as you build your relationship with God by learning more about Him, you know, and seeking Him, which is what you're doing by going to church and by, you know, having that desire to know God, that He will continue to show Himself to you. And it might be in ways that you view as small at first, but eventually you're going to be surrounded by things that you know that are the presence of God. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like, I know God gave a son for us, and I believe Jesus died for me. But I don't understand why I feel so alone.
Yeah. And there's stuff that we go through we just don't understand until it's over, you know. But I believe that you're going to get through this and you're going to know that He's there. There's blessing to people who give to God. And there's blessing to people. So if you give your time to God, He's going to give His time to you. And everything that you do is going to, God is going to repay tenfold, you know. Anything that we do in church, anything we give, financial time, God's going to repay that to us too. If the attitude that you have is, my things are mine, or my money is mine, instead of the attitude of, God, you gave me this money, you know, it's a lot harder. It's a lot easier to hold on to things when you view it as yours rather than you view it as a gift from God. Peyton has this story in his notes I'll go through. There was a time where Peyton and I, felt like God wanted us to give a rather large amount of money to a certain thing. We needed this money for other things, not just padding our bank account, but legitimate, specific things that we needed that money for. But we felt like God wanted us to give, and so we prayed about it, felt confirmation, and said, God will take care of it. After that, our car started breaking down left and right. So this was pretty recently. And these random expenses kept coming up. We actually spent like $3,000 on our car with like all the different things that happened. But we kept reminding ourselves God's going to take care of it, so we kept trusting, and it didn't always look like it was going to happen. It got stressful over a time or two, but you know, we never went hungry, we never went thirsty, we never went homeless. God took care of us through that season. And then all of a sudden, all these blessings just started flowing, and God provided back that money that we gave and then some. I can say even just in our moving process, there's been thing after thing after thing that it's like, that is a God thing, because that's crazy specific need that we had that we didn't even look for, and now it's here, you know. And he said, I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back or say I'm anything special, but just that God rewards His people. You know, if you give to God, He will give back to you. A saying we used to say at my church was, growing up, was always, you can't outgive God, you know. You can try and have fun trying, but He's going to give more to you over and abundantly. But so what happens if we don't give it up? You know, who wants to be another reader? Well, yeah, who wants to be a reader for me? Mark chapter 8. It's only 4 verses this time, so those who want a shorter portion to read. Okay, Naomi, you want to do it? Okay, Mark chapter 8, 34 through 38. Yep.
34 and 38.
Yep.
And when he had called the people unto him with his disciples also, he said unto them, Whosoever will come after me, let him deny himself, and take up his cross, and follow me. For whosoever will save his life shall lose it. But whosoever shall lose his life for my sake and the gospel's, the same shall save it. For what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? Whosoever therefore shall be ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of him also shall the Son of Man be ashamed, when he cometh in the glory of his Father with the holy angels.
So if we want God to be, proud of us, we have to give him everything. And if we, what do we gain if we hold on to everything but we don't make it to heaven with Jesus? That's the main point. If we don't give up the things that possess us, then we're severely limiting the quality of our pursuit with God. And we're severely limiting how close we can get to God, because God has so much more for us than what we can get when we're consumed with other things. And honestly, by doing that, we're showing him that we don't trust him enough to take care of those things. So how do we give these things up that possess us? This is what Tozer, A.W. Tozer, said about it. Father, I want to know you, but my cowardly heart fears to give up its toys. I cannot part with them without inward bleeding, and I do not try to hide from you the terror of the parting. I come trembling, but I do come. Please root from my heart all the things which I have cherished so long and which have become a very part of my living self, so that you may enter and dwell there. That's just a section of his prayer. But we should all desire to pray a prayer like that and mean it, right? We should, those things that you thought about earlier that you have a hard time giving up. We should all come to the place where we can pray that God would take our desire for those things away so that we can serve him more. And I'm not saying completely take away those things, but take away the desire that ends up consuming our minds and our hearts when we should have time, be giving that time to God. And it takes action, just actually doing something on our end. We can't just pray about it, but we need to keep ourselves accountable, right? So if there's something that's taking up all of our time and we feel like it's taking away from God's time in our life, then we should, do something to keep us from spending all of our time with that, or talk to a friend or a spouse or a brother or sister and, have them help you stay accountable if it's something that's really eating up your time, because we want to give ourselves to God, and we don't want to always come back with the same excuse of, well, I'm busy, but I love you, Jesus. How many times have I been praying and have I come to God with an excuse, saying, God, I'm sorry that I've been so distracted, but instead of, God, I'm sorry I've been so distracted, help me to focus. Because as a mom, I feel like I'm 10 times more distracted every day. But we gotta have a game plan. We have to take it seriously enough to really focus on those things and figure out how to give God more of our life. So having the mindset and the attitude of God, this is yours. Sometimes the things that take up all of our time are good things, like family or our jobs. But if we allow those good things to become idols, we allow it to possess us. If those good things are all we ever think about, then we're doing a disservice to ourselves with our relationship with God.
After all, doesn't Jesus say, he that loveth father and mother more than me is not worthy of me?
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah. If we love something more than God, we're saying we would rather have that than God, and God's saying, well, you're not worthy of what I have for you then, We can become like the man in the Bible who chose his possessions over following Jesus. So we have to let go of the things that we're holding on to. Not just the things that we've mentioned today, but also our hurts, our hopes, our failures, our victories, all of the good and the bad things that are holding us back. None of them are more important than our walk with God. I don't want to gain this whole world and lose my soul. I'd rather let go of the temporary things and enjoy an eternity with God. And so as we continue to develop our relationship with God, let's give him our focus, let's give him our time, and let's give him our energy. Does anyone else have anything else they would like to add? You still can, but I'm going to turn off the recording.